Hi everyone, my name is Shana Dinaji, and on behalf of Texto, I'm going to be doing this webinar. Today we're going to be looking at the magic box for Start the Magic 3, and we're going to unbox the magic. So let's have a look inside and see what wonderful resources the magic box provides for us and how we can exploit those in the classroom to sort of engage our learners and also focus on the 4 different skills. Academic year is in full swing, and hopefully you have, looked at all of these materials and have started to use some of them. So I'd like you to just take a few minutes now just to reflect a little bit on the materials in the magic box. What's your favorite so far? You may want to stop the video and make a few notes. Think about which of these resources you have used the most, which of you use the least, and perhaps think a little bit about why. Hopefully over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll give you some ideas of how you can exploit these resources and use them a little bit more over the next few months and the next academic year. Let's move on then and have a look at the contents of the magic box. Here we have a list of all the contents of the magic box, and the things I'm going to focus on today are the posters, the flashcards, the self-correction files, the speaking cards, the classroom management signs, the dice and the dice cards, the hand puppets, and of course, wonderful Max. Hopefully you have used a few of these already. If not, let's see if we can add to your list of creative ideas to use in the classroom. So first of all, before we actually look at some concrete practical ideas, I'd like you just to reflect a little bit about why it's a good idea to use these resources. I mean, like you, if I'm teaching a class, I know sometimes we're short on time, so we focus a lot on using our course book and the activity book, and even that sometimes it's a bit tight to get through all the material. Start the Magic has lots of wonderful ideas in the actual course book and activity book, and you may find that you don't have time to use some of the extra resources. So one of the reasons I think it's important is that it provides variety for us and variety especially for the children. And hopefully some of the ideas we'll look at today will show you how you can provide that variety. Also, it helps to engage the learners in more interactive activities. There are many opportunities in Start the Magic to do speaking and listening to each other and different things which the course book and activity book recommend. But you'll see that the resources themselves also add to that list. It encourages the learners to do activities that move away a little bit from the sort of classic sort of open class or teacher guided activities. Things like the self-correction files, for example, allow the children some autonomy, and we'll look at how we can exploit those in the classroom. The all-important differentiation. Start the Magic has sort of provided quite an important, it's quite an important aspect of the course book, and there are lots of opportunities suggested in the teacher's notes and throughout the book on how you can cater for differentiation in your classroom. But again, we're going to look at how these resources can do that as well. And I think it gives us, the teacher, an opportunity to develop some threads from the course book in a little bit more detail. So some of the topics, for example, take them a little bit further than what's in the course book, including things like arts and crafts, cross-curricular things like mathematics, etc. And I'm sure there are others. Again, you might want to take just a minute to reflect on why you yourself have decided to open the box or unbox the magic and use those resources in your classroom. Hopefully some of the reasons are the same as mine, but you may have others as well. All right, so let's start with some practical ideas. one of the resources are the posters, all right? Remember that most of what I'm going to be talking about today is also available in the digital format. So you may be using the actual physical poster, or you're using it in the digital version of the course book, which you are projecting onto the board in the classroom. So the posters here, you have a couple of examples. We've got one on school objects and one on games and sports. And I'm going to sort of be talking about ideas. I'll use these two as an example, but obviously there are many more, and, focusing on all the different language areas that are covered in the book. So if we look at posters, doing things like asking the children, how many can you see? So how many green things, if we look at the school objects poster, for example, how many green things can you see? Take a minute to think. Hopefully you've said at least two, right? The ruler and the scissors. Or you could say, how many long things can you see? And here, again, I'll give you a minute to think. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things at least, all right? How many things starting with S can you see, right? So many different questions that you can ask to encourage the children to think about the language. Obviously, they can say the number. So again, bringing in a little bit of sort of cross-curricular here, but you can also get them to actually say the word. So how many green things can you see? Oh, I can see 2. All right, what are they? Right, the scissors and the ruler, for example. Counting, right? So counting the shapes. So how many things that are rectangular, right? Again, a little bit of mathematics coming in here. How many soft things? How many pink things, right? Counting the shapes, counting the colors, counting the objects. Find, right? So if we look at the poster for games and sports, you could say, find the boy that has a 3 on his t-shirt, right? Where is it? Where is it? Put your hand up, right? Which one? He's playing football, for example, right? Find the boy wearing glasses. Where is he? Hopefully you've spotted him, and so on. You could sort of recycle a really fun sort of traditional game, which is I Spy with My Little Eye. I'm sure you all know this game, but for those who don't remember, it's something like I spy with my little eye something beginning with R. Again, let's look at the school objects. Can you think of something beginning with R? What is it? Hands up. Yeah, all right. Okay, ruler or rubber. Or you could say, I spy with my little eye something pink. What is it? Book, and so on, right? So getting the children, so you could start, you demonstrate the activity, and then let the children take it in turns. I also like to do a variation on that game, which is sort of reversed. So instead of saying, so the answer is always the same. So let's take book as an example. So we always want the answer is always book, but what changes is the way we define the book. So, for example, I spy with my little eye something pink. Book. I spy with my little eye something that's rectangular. Book. I spy with my little eye something you can read or write in. What's the answer? Book. All right, so you get the idea. Again, you would demonstrate and you'd get the children to see how many different ways they could think of to describe a book or scissors, right? And this could be something that they do in groups, right? So you would demonstrate, set it up, and let them play the game in pairs or groups. Dominoes, you could adapt the idea of dominoes. So as everybody knows, dominoes, we usually match 2 things that are the same. So using the posters, you could get the children to say, so I say, for example, scissors, and my partner has to say something that links to scissors. So for example, think, what would you say? Maybe sharpener, right? They both cut. Or I say crayons, and my partner thinks could be pencil, because they both write, and so on, right? So the idea of dominoes, of matching something, but here they're not actually physically sort of matching, but they speaking and saying the words. You could adapt it also to bring in some structure, so some language structure that you've practiced. So things like put the ruler on the sharpener. So if you give them, let me see if I can find, all right, so I have a flashcard of a sharpener. So I could give it to one of the children and say, all right, so put the sharpener on the school bag. And the child comes and has to put this flashcard in the right place. This is quite a common activity that is done in English exams, you know, like starters, movers, and flyers, etc. So if some of your students are doing exams like that, they may be familiar with this activity. Also things like, is the book next to the pencil? So have a look. Yes, it is. No, it isn't, right? So practicing asking and answering like this. If you have the word cards from your flashcards, you could give out the flashcard, and here we've got sharpener, and so you give out the word cards and the children come and match them to the pictures. Of course, you're going to say to me, but the words are there already, which they are, but maybe you could cover the words, right? And then they come and match, and then they can uncover to check if they were right. Another fun activity is where you say an incorrect sentence and the children have to the children have to correct it. So for example, the ruler is next to the glue. Let's have a look. Is it? And the children have to say, no, no, it isn't. The ruler is next to the sharpener. Here you can bring in a little bit of word stress, sentence stress, getting them to emphasize the words and where they are. So you can have fun using, you know, you say the incorrect sentence, they correct. And then, of course, once you've demonstrated it once or twice, the children could do it in pairs or groups themselves. So you can see here that the posters themselves are not simply decorative, right? They can be used to exploit the vocabulary that you've taught, but also some different language structures without going into the grammar as such. But, you know, things like, is it? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. You know, emphasizing, working on sentence stress, etc. Right? Using prepositions next to and, you know, under, and all sorts of things like that, right? So we can see here that we've got a lot of speaking and listening to each other, also sort of recognizing the written word, right? So it's not reading as such, but reading practice of the words, and also getting the children to work on vocabulary that they've learned and language structure as well. All right, and so we've already looked a little bit, we've sort of had a flash of the flashcards. And again, I think flashcards are the primary teacher's best friend. And hopefully you've been making good uses of these. So, I mean, lots of ideas, and I'm sure the ones I'm going to suggest are not necessarily new, but hopefully some of them might remind you of activities that you've done before. So a classic and one that I really enjoy doing is a running race. So taking your flashcards and sort of putting them up either around the classroom, if you are able to do that, or on the board. Again, remember, you can use the digital version of the book to display some of the flashcards on the board, or even on the floor of the classroom, however you prefer, and divide the students into groups. You could get them to stand in a line, and you say one of the items. So for example, you say, what's the word? What's the word? You're right, you don't show it, sorry, you just say the word sharpener, and then they, you know, one person from each group has to run, and the first one to touch it or to get the word and bring it back to you, or just touch it, they get a point, and so on, right? This is sometimes done with fly swatters. Do you remember those things we used to have in our house, right, where the children come, and you've probably seen this before in other sessions. All right, Pelmanism, sort of matching, right? So again, you have the word and the picture, which these, of course, can be divided. So you could display these on the board, face down, of course, so the children don't see it. And, someone comes and they turn one over. What is it? Oh, it's what is it? Sharpener, right? And then they turn over another one and it's a school bag. Is it a pear? No, right? So then they turn it back over, and then someone else comes and they have to try and find the match. All right, sharpener. All right, so this is quite nice to be done again on the board using the interactive version, or with the actual flashcards, or on the floor. It's quite nice to do it. You could give, once you've been through 1 or 2 or 3 of the units, you could mix this up. So it's not only, school objects or only numbers, etc. You could mix it up so that it's a little bit more challenging. Also, sort of what's missing. Again, this is not a new activity, but it's a fun activity where you sort of display many of the flashcards on the board. Children cover their eyes, you take one away, and they have to look and see which one is missing. All right, so they look and they have to sort of remember which of the words are missing. Funny drills. This is something that I really enjoy doing, and I think the children have fun with them. So, showing a picture, but, you could do something like this very quickly. What is it? Oh, it's a sharpener, right? Or, sort of a quick flash. Oh, what is it? Sharpener. Or, we have to say the word. So I'll get another one. Here we go. We've got, what is this? A school bag. So school bag is big, soft. So let's say this word in a big and soft way, like school bag, or, sharpener. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Sharpener. It's a sharp one. So sharpener. All right, so fun ways of exploring the words, saying the words as if they are the words themselves. And the keyhole, again, not new, but a favorite of mine. So, get a bit of card, cut a little picture, a little keyhole, and you sort of show. Can you see a little bit? It's very small. What is it? What color is it? Is it big? Is it small? And then, get the children to sort of say, is it a sharpener? No, it isn't. Is it a book? No, it isn't. Is it rubber? No. What is it? Oh, it's a school bag. All right. So obviously my hole's very small here and probably you can't see it, but, getting them to sort of have a look and try to guess. Again, here we playing with the language, not only the vocabulary itself, but questions and answers. Guessing games, giving the children a few pictures, a few flashcards. They pick one, right? And then they can describe it. So they can say it's small, it's green, I use it with my pencil. What is it? Yeah, sharpener. All right. Or, the other children have to ask, is it a pencil? No. Is it a school bag? No. Right. What is it? Sharpener, and so on. All right. So all of these games are sort of using the flashcards in a sort of creative way, getting the children to interact with each other, with the teacher. Obviously, you demonstrate, you need to give clear examples, etc., but demonstrate it. And then let them get on with it. Let them do this in pairs, in groups, as a competition, just for fun. But let them sort of use the flashcards and exploit them in lots of different ways. I'm sure you have other ideas and really creative ones of how you use your flashcards. So hopefully these can add to the ones you have. All right, so let's move on then to the self-correction files. Now, I mentioned earlier that the self-correction files are a good way of focusing on differentiation and dealing with mixed ability in the class. So, I mean, here we've got a couple of examples. So the one you have here is looking at the weather. And if we look back again at it, we can see we've got some sort of jumbled words and some matching, right? Where they see the words, they have to count and write. And then another example where it involves reading. So again, we can see the skills here, right? Different things coming in. All of the self-correction files have their own answers on the back, all right? So let's think about how we can exploit these in the class. So of course, fast finishes is a classic way of using these, and I'm sure all of you have already experimented with that. You know, the sort of, oh, I finished, and you never know what to do with those students, right? These should be looked at not as a punishment. You finished, go and do some more work, but a little bit like a reward, right? You finished, so go and get one of the self-correction files and work through it. So the other thing which I think is nice is to include it as a planned activity in your lesson, as part of the lesson. So for example, you know, actually schedule 10 minutes of your lesson, for example, where, you know, everyone is doing a self-correction file, or they're working on them in groups of 3 or groups of 4 or whatever. So you could pre-select the ones that you want them to work on. You could do it as a carousel. So you have, say, 4 files that you want to use that lesson, and each group gets sort of 10 minutes to work on it, and then they self-correct, and you can monitor and help them. And in this way, you can deal with different skills. So say you have one that's got a bit of reading, one that's a puzzle, one that's a writing activity, etc. So you can cater for lots of different things in your class. You can do some skills work, some language work, and also you could be strategic. And if you've grouped the learners or the children according to sort of same ability groups, you could give the sort of students that need a little bit more help, a bit more guidance, an easier task. The ones that are stronger perhaps can have a more challenging task to start with, and so on, right? So this is another way that you could exploit these in the classroom. One thing that I think is quite a nice idea is to reverse it. So they have the answers on the back. How about getting them to look at the answers and try to create the questions, right? Or in this case here, right, they've got the numbers, and they have to write the numbers. So here they have the opposite. Sometimes they have the digit or and sometimes they have the word. So you give them these and they have to create the others, right? So there's lots of different things that you could get the children to do. And so one self-correction file can be used more than once. So sometimes they do it the right way, sometimes they do it the reverse, right? Another thing is just as a warmer. So how about, you know, that critical moment that we have where the children come into class and they're all distracted and they're grabbing their bags and they're doing all sorts of things. And or even at the end of the lesson where they're, you know, anxious to go because they're excited, they've got football, etc., and we need them to sort of focus. So getting them, you know, maybe you start the lesson where you have some of these files on the desks, so as they come in, rather than talking to their friends and doing whatever, they sit down and they work through the task, right? They could do this with the person sitting next to them if they share desks and so on. The same thing works at the end of the lesson. So before the end, right, so the last 5 minutes, we're all going to work on one. Again, remember, these are available in the digital format, so you could display it. Yeah. All right, so again, here we've got some reading, some writing, some vocabulary work. You know, as I've shown you, you know, some of them deal with sort of some of the sort of structures that come in the units. So all of the language that's covered in the units is available to be used here, to be covered here in the self-correction files. All right, and then speaking. I mean, speaking, I think, is a really important part of, language teaching, as I'm sure you know. But it's difficult to do sometimes when you have a class of, 20, 30 children, to give them that, the time to be able to actually speak at length and not just be simply asking and answering questions. So I think the speaking cards can be exploited very nicely for that. If you've had a look at them, you can see that usually there's a picture and then there's some prompt questions that can be used to exploit the picture. You could use these for assessment. So you may have the children all working independently on something in the course book, and you could sort of call out individual students, and you could do the task with them and use this to assess their speaking activity. But it can also be used with the children themselves working in pairs or groups. So this particular one is about birthdays. This one here is looking at the different activities and sports and games and so on. So some ideas. Obviously, it's really important for the teacher to demonstrate the activity first so that they have a clear idea of what it is they're doing, and then they can work in pairs or groups. I also like to use these where you could sort of cover the questions and get the children to try to think about questions that they could ask each other. So, I mean, here, if we look at this one, we've got how many children, what's the girl doing, who's wearing the cap, etc. But the children could say, all right, point to something blue. How many boys are there? How many girls? Here we've got spell helicopter, but the children could say, where's the helicopter? Show me, or whatever, right? So you could introduce some interesting language and get the children to practice, making up their own questions. And another thing you could do as well is you could select some of the questions and make them into a little bit of a gap fill, right? So here we've got how many children can you see? So we could sort of cover the word children, and we get them, to say how many children can you see? How many balls can you see? How many numbers can you see? How many, and so on. You get the idea, right? So once again, I mean, the main focus here is speaking and listening to each other, focusing on the language that's covered in the unit, so the vocabulary, the structures, and so on. But also you could get them to write their own questions, to, focus on the language used in the questions, and so on. Obviously, they're reading the questions as well, which is important. So not only language work, but skills work as well. All right, the classroom management signs, I've got mine here. Hopefully you've had fun using these, right? So all sorts of instructions that we use all the time in the classroom. These are fun, I think, they feel good. They're nice and sort of sturdy. It's nice and fun to use, but we could also exploit them in different ways in the classroom. So getting the children to be the monitors. So, handing these out at the beginning of the lesson to different children, and different children are responsible for that instruction during the lesson. You can then sort of call on them and say, all right, João, João goes, everyone stand up, and so on. Okay, making a poster. For example, the one of time to clean up. Right, so maybe at the beginning of the academic year, which of course we're past, but as a way of sort of recycling and making sure that they understand all the instructions, giving one of the sign, allocating them to different pairs or groups, and they have to make a poster that illustrates the meaning, right? So time to clean up, for example, they could draw the classroom, they could have, what is it they clean up, right? The rubbish, the rubbish bin where they put things, you could expand on this if you wanted to go cross-curricular. So time to clean up the beaches, time to clean up the park, and so on. A nice sort of language activity here, we could sort of think, all right, how many of these do we use please with? All right, so time to clean up, please. Raise your hand, please, maybe, right? Stand up, please. But do we say, your turn, let's learn, please? No, right? But you could get them practicing, you know, to say things like, line up, please. Stand up, please. Time to clean up, please. All right, so drilling this and working on it. Introducing some useful language, and let's sort of use our friend Max for this. All right, so you know, Max encouraged the children to say, well, could I have the lineup paddle, please? Could I have it, please? Or it's my turn today, it's my turn, can I be the monitor? It's my turn. All of this language can be exploited, right? So trying to make language as meaningful as possible in the classroom. Okay, and then we come to the big dice and the dice cards, right? Hopefully you've already had fun using these. Remember that there's a digital version of the dice that you can use. So, you know, all of these things like, you know, write, say, spell, and so on. And, you know, obviously the classic is to use the dice and get them to use the dice cards to play the game. A fun way to recycle the vocabulary in the book. But there are other things that we could do with this as well, right? So obviously using the dice question cards. What about getting the children to invent questions? So, you know, once they've understood what the different icons mean, you know, they throw the dice or they use the digital one, and they've got spell, right? And it's my turn, so I say to my partner or the people in my group or the class, spell this word, all right? Or spell ruler, or spell whatever. Or I throw again and I say, you know, find 3 red things in the classroom, right? So the children can be the ones to ask the question. Another idea is to sort of exploit these icons and make sort of a board where, you know, they play with a regular dice, but when they land on one of the icons, right, they land on this one, then you use the question cards, and here they have to say this number, which is, what is it? 19, and so on, right? So using the icons, but making it into a board game as well. And another nice idea, let me see if I can show you this. I'll try and see if it will work. Right, where they play the game or with the dice, right? But they have to say, for example, they have to draw a picture. Let's say we'll say they have to draw a flower, and the flower has to have 4 petals, right? So the first one to get the 4 petals and the flower wins. But in order to get that, they have to, you know, get one of each, for example. So say they throw the dice and they get this one, right? Which is, right, find the number 16. So they find it. All right, so I got it. So now on my piece of paper, I can draw the middle of the flower. Right, then I throw again. Oh, but I got this one again. So I can't do anything. All right, then I throw, oh, and I got this one. All right, so what's this one? Here it is, I have to say this word. What is it? School bag. Okay, so now I can draw 1 petal, right? And so on. So they have to sort of collect, you know, 4 petals to win. For example, I chose a flower because it's a nice, easy picture, but it could be a box or whatever, right? But they only get to draw a petal if they get a different icon, right? Which would encourage them to keep playing the game. All right, so you can see here, I mean, the game itself is designed to recycle the language that's used in the unit, but not only, I mean, they get to read the words, read the instructions, they are speaking and listening to each other. In the case of spelling, they're doing some written practice of the words. All right, so lots of language and skills work there as well. Okay, and then of course the hand puppets and Max, of course, our favorite hand puppet. All right, and here I've got Roy and Ava, right? And you know, these, I mean, the classic thing is to get them to role play the different dialogues from the book, which can be fun. But things like getting Max is the teacher, right? And he looks at you and he says, oh, all right, what's João wearing? All right, so let's have a look. Where's João? Where's João? Okay, all right. What's João wearing? And Max asks one student, and student answers about João, etc. Right? So getting Max using, you know, so it's not always you. I mean, Max can talk to you, but he can also talk to the children as well. For classroom management, Max is really good at classroom management, right? Max, line up. All right, so getting Max to give the instructions. Again, you could, you know, one of the children can have a turn to be Max and to give the instructions. They don't have to use the signs, but they could just say, Max says, time to clean up, or Max says, right? They could have a go at that. Describe and find. So if you handed out the different hand puppets to the children, and I could say, all right, so this person is a girl. She's wearing green. Who is it? Oh, it's Ava, right? Okay, and so on, right? So using these as flashcards as well, right? Getting them to you know, be part of the lesson, part of, you know, when you teach the colors, you could use it when you teach the numbers, you know, so a boy and a girl, how many boys, how many girls, and so on. And obviously the classic dialogue. Hello, what's your name? My name's Ava. What's your name? My name's Roy, and so on. Okay, getting them to practice. All right, so again, some language work, some you know, speaking and listening to each other, revising the vocabulary from the units, doing some classroom management and so on. But, you know, taking it away from the teacher. We talked earlier about giving the children a little bit more autonomy, making it more student-centered. So sort of, you know, making Max, one of them be Max, one of them, you know, be one of the characters, etc. Removes the focus off you a little bit. All right, so here we are. You know, these were the reasons that we looked at the beginning. And I think, you know, mostly, I think these resources cater for all of these things. So we've looked at, you know, a little bit of variety away from the course book, away from the activity book, bringing in a different focus. You know, a lot of these materials are nice to touch, you know, even, you know, just the hand puppet, etc. It's nice taking the children's eyes off the book, off the board, onto something else, engaging them in more interactive thing, allowing them to, you know, have a dialogue together, to play a game together. It doesn't always have to be teacher to students or students to teachers, sorry. You know, also dealing with mixed ability and differentiation. So having things like the self-correction files, the speaking cards, etc., allows the children to work independently in mixed ability groups, in same ability groups, having some say in what it is they want to work on that day. And also, as we've seen, you could take, you know, some of these, I gave the idea of, you know, clean up the beaches, etc. Or even why is it important to be quiet and pay attention, etc. So you could sort of deal with, you know, making some posters, so arts and crafts, or, you know, bringing in some mathematical sort of activities with the language, etc. So branching out into other sort of curriculum areas, and also, you know, developing these topics beyond what is done in the coursebook. And I'm sure you'll have thought of many, many more. So I'm hoping that you enjoyed this and you could at least find one activity, one new idea that you can use in the classroom, over the next week or so. Maybe go back to your original notes at the beginning of this webinar, where I asked you to think about, which of these resources you use the most and which you use the least. And maybe the one that you use the least, maybe you've got one or two new ideas that you could use over the next month or so. All right. Thank you very much for listening and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Lei Educação. Um ponto de encontro.